All right, welcome everybody to another edition of Legal Tech Week. It is, what is it? It's March 7th, 2025. This is the show where we talk about the latest news in legal tech and innovation. And this may be it today. We're not entirely sure. We're not entirely sure who's showing up. We think Stephanie is going to be here, but she hasn't arrived yet. So we're hoping she does. She's on her way off to a trip, so she's a little betwixt and between things today. And Joe is off getting an award. Where is that? I thought I had that. The what is it? The Association of Joe got an award from the Association of Media and Entertainment Council as its Public Council of the Year. So that sounds pretty cool. And Joe got that last night at an awards banquet in Los Angeles and is somewhere in the air, maybe between the West and East Coasts or on his way to Chicago right now. We're not exactly sure where Joe is either. Yeah, kudos to Joe for that. So it may just be us, but you may have to put up with us, and that's okay. Well, we can keep it concise and short and let everybody off onto their weekends early. Um, but I thought I might start. Victor, I was really intrigued by the story that you picked this week. It's an ABA Journal story. You're picking up a Reuters story, but you want to kind of give us a summary of what that was about?
We skipped
Yeah,
introduction. Maybe we don't need them
Oh,
because
we did skip introductions, didn't we?
we probably don't. I don't know if we
we,
need
we
them.
need we
Who
need our
are you
introduction at this
people?
point, right?
We need time to
Who
kill
are
there.
you people?
We
See,
just
I'm thrown. My whole timing is thrown off here by having no panelists. Let's introduce ourselves. Nikki, why don't you go first?
I'll speak really slowly to fill up time.
Slowly go through your whole list of jobs.
My name is Nikki.
And we'll hear all day then.
We'll be here all day, right? Yeah, I'm principal insight strategist at Affinipay, parent company of Law Pay My Case, Docket Wise, and Case Peer. I write legal tech articles for ABA Journal Above the Law and the Daily Record, and I oversee and author our industry report, which is coming out very, very soon, and I'm excited about that. And I talked a lot faster than I intended to. I can't talk slow, I guess. Well, it doesn't work even if I try.
Yeah, and as somebody said, the woman who needs no introduction. But and not to mention, was it just this week you guys announced the Kaleidoscope? Or did we talk about that last week? But you got your conference coming up on top of everything else in September, so that's kind of something else to look forward to this year.
Yeah, and our virtual legal seminar next Tuesday. So it's lots going on.
All right. Let's see, who else is there today? Victor, I don't think I've called on you yet.
Yeah, my name is Victor Lee. I am assistant managing editor for the ABA Journal, focusing on business of law and technology. I'm an Aries, born year of the horse for Chinese zodiac people. Uh, the sports teams I root for are really bad this year and have been for the last couple of years, so I don't really want to talk about that either. Um, yeah, I don't know what else to really say to describe myself. You know.
All right, well, we'll have to go there. And I'm Bob Ambrogi. I have a blog called Law Sites and a podcast called Law Next. And I was born on a small farm in a small rural area of Western Massachusetts, and used to no, I wasn't born on a farm at all, and wouldn't know what to do if I wasn't got near a farm. So, all right, now we can talk about the Utah case.
Yeah, so yeah, this story was interesting just because we've talked about Utah and Arizona and like sort of their moves to somewhat deregulate their practices of law there. And so Utah had a regulatory sandbox that had attracted quite a few businesses, lawyers, and whatnot, and looking to take advantage of the rules that would relax the unauthorized practice of law regulations. But so this week there was a story, Reuters reported it, and we picked it up, of at least 27 law firms and businesses that may be leaving the sandbox because recently, I guess the Utah the program decided, well, the court decided to tighten up the requirements that it had to show that there was an actual, they're actually serving an underserved segment of the legal market, and there actually was an attempt to kind of bridge the gap in justice and whatnot, rather than just showing up and having a different type of business structure and whatnot. And so I mean, a lot of people made note of that, just the number of the sheer number of businesses that were leaving, and the fact that they tightened up regulations. But I mean, and Rocket Lawyer was probably one of the biggest ones that decided to exit. Um, but I mean, like the whole point of the original Sandbox was to serve these communities and to serve these people and entities and individuals that could not afford access to valid legal representation and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, so if they weren't being served, that's kind of like what was the point of the whole Sandbox? So it was good that they kind of reiterated that segment, but then they reiterated that point of the central point of the central conceit of the whole program to begin with. But of course, now it'll be interesting to kind of see like whether this has an impact on the overall. Because I mean, I think Utah was they were planning on trying to compile as much data as possible to see sort of if the program was working or not, and then they would reevaluate and things like that. Like they didn't do what Arizona did, just permanently and just change the rules. This was more of a pilot program thing. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how the data then comes out with all these programs exiting, like if they can still generate the kind of data that they would need to either justify continuing the program or modifying it even more, or maybe even discontinuing it. But yeah, it's just interesting to kind of see the team take that step. I mean, somebody must have. I mean, enough people must have had a problem with what was going on, and they must have brought up this decision that they were willing to go that route in the first place.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because we've talked about that program a lot, and it's been talked about as a real model in terms of innovating or potentially innovating the delivery of legal services. I mean, it and Arizona have been the two states that everybody talks about. And if you look at the letter that the court wrote, um, in one sense, they kind of double down in their commitment to the program. I mean, they say they're not stepping back from the program, but they seem to be saying that some of the um, entities that were licensed as alternative providers under the program, we're kind of taking advantage of it in some ways. We're using it to kind of do some false marketing. There was a letter mentioned in the letter that some companies were claiming they were like endorsed by the Utah Supreme Court, which wasn't necessarily the case. And that a lot of companies were kind of just going in and getting into the sandbox, but not really doing anything in Utah. They were just kind of somehow using it as a basis for expanding their business in other states, or being able to kind of make claims about their business that um, you know uh, that didn't necessarily inure to the benefit of low-income people in Utah in any way. Um, so that was interesting. I would love to see. I don't know, Victor, if you looked or if there was any kind of a list of what would you say, like 30 companies or something left the program, or a large number. So I'd love to know which companies ended up leaving the program other than Rocket Lawyer, which you mentioned. Um, but I thought I just thought it was really interesting, an interesting development in that, and be interesting to see now how the program continues to evolve from here. What kinds of programs remain with it? What kinds of experimental programs remain in it? What kinds of new ones come along to become part of it?
Yeah, I know the website had a lot of the forms that I guess you had to sign a form withdrawing from the program. So I know the website had the Rocket Lawyer form. I didn't go through all of them. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, they were definitely the big name. I mean, it's Rocket Lawyer. I mean, and actually it was funny, the person who made the statement to us about Rocket Lawyer's withdrawal was our former CEO
Right, Jack
at the
Reeves.
yeah.
Yep.
Well,
Who's
I've
yeah.
consistently said since we started this show, I think I take the minority view that I just don't ever see how any of these different approaches to, especially like these sandboxes, are going to solve access to justice because, capitalism trumps altruism. And at the end of the day, it's about making money, not helping underserved people. And as soon as Utah's like, yeah, show us how you're helping underserved people, they're like, yep, gotta go. And like everybody left. Like, I mean, that's not what any of that's what these sandboxes in theory should be for, but that's in reality, that's just isn't what happens. And that's not how companies and capitalism work. So I don't think we're ever going to even come close to solving this problem. It's a little depressing, but I, I wish that hadn't been the result here.
Well, yeah, okay. They're not going to solve the access to justice problem, but I think some of them were certainly making, making a dent in their specific focus areas. Um, what's the one who's the program that helps people get expungements in Utah, which has been very successful.
Rasa.
Yeah, Rasa, which I'm hoping they're still in the program, but that seems very clearly to be one that fits within the parameters of the program, where they are only serving people in Utah, and I think they would like to expand the model into other states, but they're very definitely serving people in Utah and helping them get something for, I think they charge like $100 that would cost, a couple $1,000 if they went through a lawyer. So I mean,
Oh,
there are programs that are having an impact, but they're not solving the access to justice problem. That's for sure. Yeah.
actually, on the website they have a list of previously authorized entities, which I guess there would be people that entities that were authorized but then withdrew. So Rocket Law is one of them. Hello Divorce was one of them, which we're familiar with.
Oh, interesting.
There, yeah. It looks like Rasa's still on there. So
Oh, good.
I think.
Good.
I mean,
I
I
don't know. Yeah.
absolutely people that, like I always say, are legitimately interested in using technology to bridge access to justice, and that's truly their goal. But when these types of programs roll out, I think most companies that become involved in them, that is not their goal. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I mean, I
Um,
think it's good that they. I mean, I don't know if they did an audit or if they did like, you know, yeah. I don't know the logistics of like how they would clean up some of these, how they would clear the decks, so to speak. But like, I think it's good that they like went through and they were just like, hey, if you guys are really, you must really have like some kind of, way or show some kind of progress of actually bridging the access to justice gap. Otherwise, we're just wasting our time here. So I mean, it's good that they actually stuck with the central conceit of the whole program rather than just being like, all right, well, let's just see what happens.
yeah. I don't know. A year ago, Stanford came out with a study of the data coming out of Utah and Arizona to look at the extent to which those programs were effective in addressing access to justice issues. And I know they were supposed to be coming out with a updated version of that in the beginning of this year. I don't know whether they have done that. I haven't seen it, but doesn't mean it didn't come out. I don't know if I've noticed it, but it would be interesting to see what the data showed, because in the first year when they did that report, I think they did it right around the beginning of 2024, it showed that Utah's program had been much more effective than Arizona's program at at addressing sort of access to justice issues. Arizona's a lot of the alternative business licenses that have been issued are more for sort of hybrid entities that are kind of in some ways providing traditional legal services, but with a twist, and often in like an accounting and law firm working together or something like that, to be able to provide a broader array of services, but not always necessarily targeting the access to justice issue. So I don't know. Well, anyway, an interesting development, I guess, and we'll have to stay tuned. Um, so one of the other stories this week, I'm gonna jump to one of my own, because last week we talked about the uh, the what was that? Blanking on the name of the Val's AI study that the Legal Tech Hub people helped produce. Stephanie was talking about it last week. We were all talking about it last week, but it was the Val's AI was one of the first kind of major studies to benchmark some of the leading AI tools, looking at Harvey, at Westlaw, at Lexis, the Vincent AI from VLEX was in there, and it had some interesting findings. Um, this week, right after that, there's been another benchmarking tool that came out this week, a study by uh, a group of, basically it's a group of researchers and academics from the University of Michigan and University of Minnesota law schools. And I'll drop a link in the chat here. Um, but this one claims to be the first to provide empirical evidence, quote, that AI tools can consistently and significantly enhance the quality of a human lawyer's work across various realistic assignments. So in other words, not just does it increase the efficiency of lawyers' work and help them save time, but this was able to show that it does dramatically increase the quality of their work. And if you read the study, one of the things that's interesting about it is instead of looking at a whole bunch of products like the VALS study did, well, the VALS study didn't look at a whole bunch, but it looked at several products. This one really just looks at two, and it takes Vincent AI, the VLEX product, and compares it to OpenAI's reasoning model, the O1 preview, their kind of initial reasoning model that they put out, and looks at how those two models compared. And I thought that what was interesting was that in a lot of, both did well, but I thought what was interesting is that in a lot of ways, the OpenAI reasoning model did even better than the Vincent AI legal model across some of these tasks. And you know, and this was again kind of just the introductory version of OpenAI's reasoning model. They've now come out with, they're now, I think, a couple of models past that preview. They're at least, what is it? I think the current one is, there's an O1 and an O3 mini or something like that. But you know, the reasoning models are kind of different kinds of models because they actually are sort of, you know, the idea is they kind of are going through these steps of thinking about generating an answer before they generate the answer, and they're in theory able to provide much more sophisticated and complex answers. And this study seemed to find that across some of these legal tasks that in fact that was true, and these reasoning models were quite effective. They found that the results showed that the O1 preview yielded statistically significant quality improvements of approximately 10% to 28% across 4 assignments, while Vincent AI provided improvements of 8% to 15%. So not even quite as high as the reasoning model. And you know, they noted that Vincent AI is using kind of the RAG model that some of the other legal research providers are using, and that Vincent also has this sort of automated prompting feature that you can kind of upload a document like a complaint, and it will suggest kinds of prompts for what you might want to do with it. And they said that also helped with Vincent AI. But so the kind of the bottom line was, yes, AI is really helping improve the quality of lawyers' work. And I think in a way, their kind of final takeaway was, imagine what you could do if you could combine the reasoning model of OpenAI with the kind of the RAG training of Vincent. You could kind of really produce a much more effective model with, as they put it, multiplicative benefits in terms of what it can do for lawyers. So I thought that was interesting. We're starting to see more of, I think we're going to start to see more of this benchmarking, more of these studies. But here was another one to add to the school.
I think they're really important because the biggest hurdle that lawyers have is trust and just generally in the output. And so the more that we can have studies that appear to be for, as neutral as they can be, because like we said last week, there's always some kind of overlap because it's such a small industry. But it, it it helps sort of bridge these gaps, a different gap, not the access to justice gap, but it helps bridge the trust gap so that I think the more these studies come out and the more that the technology improves and the more that you have legal tech companies integrating this tech so that they also are working with companies that they trust. All these different levers that you can pull to increase trust are going to ultimately increase use of these tools and help lawyers figure out the ways they really can improve their practices and streamline their workflows and get work done more efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I recognize the name on the study. It was Dan Schwartz.
Yeah.
I actually I went to college with him.
Oh, is that
Um,
right?
the guy's brilliant. Like he is a freaking like look, I went to school with a lot of smart people, but like, the levels, right? I mean, he's one of the smartest people I've ever met. Like I took a class with him and he knew more about it than the professor did. And it was like economics or something. So he was like bringing up stuff that the professor like was like, oh, I gotta check on that for you, or I'm not sure about that, blah blah. And we were just like, maybe you should go up there and teach. Like I think he wore it like he took the LSAT and I think he showed up in like his bathrobe. He just woke up and of course he got into Harvard. So yeah, the guy's a genius. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like yeah, I mean, I'm just, like we were saying on last week's show. There are going to be a ton of these studies. There are going to be plenty of opportunities for people to, or not people, for like these companies to show off what they do well, and maybe what they need to work on and whatnot. So, I mean, just the more information that's out there is always going to be good. And I mean, I thought one thing that was interesting from what you put, Bob, was that I guess there's like the hallucinations went down from like 11 to 3 or something like that with their new model. And that seems like a pretty big improvement, right? I mean, I don't know, like
Yeah.
that, you know.
Yeah. I forget whether the full text of the article actually defined what it's, often it's not clear what you're talking about when you're talking about hallucinations now, because some people
Yeah,
just talk about an error as a hallucination, and there are different levels, I think, of hallucinations. But yeah, it's a good study, and I think when you take kind of combine that and the VALS study, we're starting to get some real useful information. I talked to the VALS people earlier today, just to kind of see more about what they're planning, and I know they are going to start to make this a little bit more regular and try and broaden the scope of the products that they're testing. Although they still got their legal research one to put out that they're working on that we talked about last week, so that's going to be coming sometime soon. So. Um, But one thing these studies do, Nikki, I think as you suggested, is they kind of help uh, pave the path for law firms adopting AI. And you happen to have an article this week on the path for law firms adopting AI, so maybe we should go there.
I did. I I submitted two different articles this week. That one,
Two paths.
right. I mean, and what I was trying to, I think I just kind of got a little bit focused this this week on rather than like the nitty gritty of. I tried to do sort of more overviews because I write about this stuff, and so it was really just sort of it was for Above the Law. Has it been posted yet? No. All right.
I got it. Okay.
There we go. Oh, all right. Well, I just wanted to sort of summarize my recommendations on that I give in my talks and that I give in different sort of allude to in different articles that I write about things that lawyers should think about when they jump into AI, easy ways to kind of get started and how to kind of mature your uh, as you go along the way, along the path, and you figure out what AI can do and what it can't do, and using a more consumer grade tool, then like graduate to the legal specific tools that are going to more secure your uh, data and hopefully provide fewer hallucinations because of the guardrailing on the back end. Um, and also just not to overlook the tools you already use and trust. Find out what they're going to do. Like what are these, have these companies already integrated some AI and you missed the announcement? Because that, I notice that happens frequently. People sometimes kind of don't seem to be aware that there's already some AI tools and they just missed the announcement and are using it and don't realize it. Or and what's on their roadmap, because they may be very soon solving some of the challenges you're having without you having to pay for a new tool. And maybe you can get in on their beta testing, or so that you can start becoming a part of the tool that they're creating, or the features they're creating within the tool you're already using. But I think sometimes it can be a little confusing. You think you need to choose a whole new tool, when if you've already got this existing relationship with a provider, you trust them, they already are hosting your data, and your company's data is already in that, tool. Why not see what they're up to before you vet an entirely new company? So it's just sort of helping them understand, first figure out what AI can do generally by using a commercially available tool in ethically compliant ways, and then kind of graduate to figuring out what are the actual next steps for implementation in your firm, and make sure to get buy-in from everyone that's going to use it. Don't just make some unilateral decision, because you need the buy-in from people all across your firm, because uh, they have to help you choose the tool, and then you have to train them on it, because otherwise you're investing all this time and energy in something, and if they all reject it, it's going to be for naught, which is sort of what you do across the board with any type of software. But I think it's particularly important with generative AI, because it does become so much a day-to-day part of people's workflows, once they really get used to how to use it. So that's what that article was about.
I'm curious because one of your pieces of advice is one we've given here on the show, I think, is to choose legal generative AI providers. But now I'm thinking, based on that study I was just talking about, which showed that the OpenAI model, in some ways kind of outperformed one developed and trained for the legal profession. I wonder if that advice continues to hold true as these models get more sophisticated, whether it's going to even matter whether it's a legal one or not.
I think it holds true for, I mean, so one example I'll give is everyone always throws around privilege whenever a new tech comes out. And I always think it's a little bit of a red herring, because a lot of it's like you share data with Google with Gmail, you share data like, and you share data with the cloud. There's all these, like, I feel like it's often a red herring, although there are certainly specific uh, cases that make it to the courts where it actually is an issue that have to be addressed. And so I sort of did a deep dive into privilege, because it's one of those concepts that I learn about and then I forget about for some reason. Like, I learn about the intricacies of it over the years periodically, and then for some reason it leaves my brain. So I did a deep dive in it. And I do think that legal tech companies solve a lot of those, especially those initial questions that issues that concerns lawyers have about privilege issues. Um, and so I think it's important for that, but I also think it's just important for the level. It's I think that at the end of the day, the legal tech companies are going to catch up, if that's even true that OpenAI performs better. They're going to catch up to that rate, and then you're going to be using. It's much more preferable to use a tool that's built into the tools you're already in every single day, whether it's your case management or document management or legal billing, or a legal research tool, right? Um, you want to, and they all integrate, like, and so you want to not have to keep jumping into another tool. You want to just be able to click a button when you're already in a case file, and use the AI in a way that's intuitive within that platform. I mean, when you're just talking about there's so much more that you can do with it than legal research. And everyone's always talking about legal research, and it's not that that's not important, but there are so many other things generative AI can be used for. One of the things I'm talking about at Tech Show is with Greg Siskin, is 60 use cases in 60 minutes. And we really go through more just how to use ChatGPT, but or other tools, but it's kind of like but there's so many different ways that you can use these tools. And then when you have those specific functions built into the legal tech tools you're already using, um, based upon your practice areas and your firm size, it becomes ultimately so much more useful than having to, because I work with ChatGPT all the time. You have to tell it all over again what you want it to do. And even if you copy and paste in a prompt, it still goes sideways and acts like a belligerent teenager who doesn't want to listen to you and gets super lazy sometimes. So I'm not sure what ChatGPT they were using that was so wonderful, but the ChatGPT maybe I'm not kind enough to it and it doesn't like me anymore. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm an asshole, but I don't know.
Well, I think, you made the point, I think, as Jasmine makes the point too in the chat. I mean, there are lawyers issues and there are legal issues, and I think some of the, it kind of depends what you're doing, whether a legal model is going to be better for you than a general model necessarily. I think if you're just summarizing a document or that sort of thing, no reason to have to use a legal model over anything else, I don't think. But if you're,
Really, that's a challenge. It is hard to summarize um, legal documents accurately, I would suggest, um, because of legalese. And I mean, I haven't done a head-to-head comparison, so I am, but legalese is really challenging to wrap your head around. And just like how ChatGPT calls us the legal industry when we call ourselves a legal profession. There's all these weird ways that it kind of makes stuff up or views things in a weird way, or um, I mean, I don't know. I
I
think
say legal industry too, so now I'm insulted, but I feel like
I do too.
It's the industry too, yeah. Yeah.
Although sometimes lawyers get prickly about that. They're like, we're not an industry, we're a profession. We're not a
that's their
job.
problem.
Right? I know.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting, but I think it's an interesting question though going forward in terms of what happens with to what extent legally specific models continue to have to be. I mean, again, I've talked to some computer scientists out there who have suggested that some of these reasoning models that are out there now do have capacity that equals some of the legally trained models in terms of addressing legal issues. There some of them. I mean, the part of the problem is some of them don't have access to the same data, so that's a training issue, and that's where the legal ones can be superior, I guess. But we will see.
Well, I think I have a lot to say on this, so and we have time today, so I'll say it. I I think that as what we're seeing right now for current use cases, because people haven't had the ability to haven't need time to get it right and to reduce errors as much as possible because you don't want to roll really substantive AI functionality out into a legal tech tool until you really have significantly reduced errors because it can cause big problems for your customers, right? So I think for the sort of more surface integrations that we're typically seeing across legal tech tools, that may be the case. But I think data is going to become increasingly more important over time in terms of um, I mean, I'm going to talk about case management just because that's where I live, right? But when you have case management data or document management data or legal billing data or all of that in one place, like in case management, it provides you with the ability to use your law firm's entire data set as the set from which the responses are pulled. And so you can't really do that in any kind of secure way right now with those publicly available systems. And I'm not sure you ever will be able to. Um, and there's tons of value to be drawn from that in terms of the things that you can do with that information and the ways that you can use it and the value it can provide you on the running the business side of your law firm. Um, and if you can then have integrations into tools like ClearBrief, like one of the research tools, then it can allow you for the practice side of your firm, the actual practicing of law, to be able to take those results and easily store them in your document management or case management system so that everything's all in one place and it's not, you don't have to click six different, uh, just six different mouse clicks or whatever to make it happen to get it in, to get the saved results into your practice management or document management or whatever the case may be system. So I think that it's just like anything else. Everybody wants it all to work and be seamless and integrated and all in one place. And I think that over time that's going to be increasingly important as this becomes a commonplace tool that's rolled out and is just a part of our daily lives in everything that we do. I feel pretty strongly about that. It'll be interesting to see what happens down the road, which way it really does go. Because I totally understand what you're saying, and it sounds like you've had some conversations that I have not had with people that know a lot more about this technology than I do, in terms of its capabilities, and especially as we're like moving forward. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think it still comes down to it depends on the use case. It depends on the workflow, the task, the use case, and yeah, right now your advice holds true right now. I'm not arguing with your advice. I'm more speculating on how this evolves as we go forward.
But I mean, the more options people have, do you think that would cause more paralysis, like for lawyers or law firms that are just still kind of on the fence or thinking about it, just be like, okay, well, we have all these choices now, legal, non-legal, specific, commercial, not as commercial, that kind of stuff. I mean, as more options become available, I mean, do you think that would actually cause lawyers to just be even more reluctant to just get off the fence?
I think so, because when I speak about it, oftentimes we'll just talk about it generally. Generative AI can do this, generative AI can do that, because you're talking about these big concepts. And then sometimes the question will be, well, which tools should we use for which things? And, they seem to get very overwhelmed at that. It's like it's a symptom of our society overall too. Like you have too much choice, so you get paralyzed, just like you're saying, and you don't make a choice. It's like the what's the Rush song? If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Like, forget it, I can't figure this out. I'll just, stick my head in the sand again, which is a more comfortable position for a lot of lawyers, it seems like, when it comes to tech.
Well, there
Oh, yeah,
was
if it's not Tom, if it's not Tom Sawyer, then I don't know it. So
there was the ABA just came out with its annual, is it an annual survey of legal tech? I sometimes forget whether they skip a year now and then, but so they just came out with their 2024 legal tech survey. Victor, I know you possibly want to talk about this a little bit, but I did a story this morning just kind of looking at what it said about artificial intelligence use, um, which wasn't a lot. I mean, it had sort of a section of its legal research. Uh, the legal tech ABA legal tech survey, if you've never seen it, is divided into sections like practice management software, legal research, marketing. I forget what else.
social media.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so the one on legal research had a section on artificial intelligence, and I thought it was a little strange because I assume it was talking about generative AI, but it never said that. It never used the phrase generative artificial intelligence. It never talked about large language models, but it did seem to be talking about some of the current Gen AI models. And I thought one of the interesting things was that, well, overall, it found that I think it was like, what was it, 30% of law firms are now using AI technology compared to 11% in 2023. So a notable jump, but not quite as big as I would have thought it was. I would have thought it would be higher. But when of the AI technologies that they're using, what's the number one tech they're using? It's ChatGPT. So it was like something like, what was it, 52% of respondents indicated they are now using or considering using
Considering using it, yeah.
ChatGPT. So I don't know what that tells us, but it reminds me of when the legal tech survey used to come out on legal research issues, and you'd see that like 60% of lawyers were using Google for legal research or something. It was, I think it's a cost issue as part of it. It's just, some of these legal specific LLMs cost money and can cost a lot of money, whereas ChatGPT is free, and that's important.
Well, yeah, and the funny thing is that I think um, for the law firms, it's broken down by size, and so it's mostly big law firms that are using AI, whatever that means, right? Whatever.
Right.
It's like 30% of it's like 46% of firms with 500 or more attorneys use AI compared to 30% of firms with 10 to 49 lawyers and just 18% of solo attorneys. Um, so yeah, I mean, you would think that with a free tool like ChatGPT, there would be more solos or more that would be willing to use it. But then it raises other issues, sort of like do they have are they worried about yeah, like getting in trouble with it, or not using it properly, or things like that. And so I thought it was kind of counterintuitive, kind of like, well, yeah, like you have the free tool that's being used the most, and someone brought it up in chat. That's probably just because it has the most name recognition. That's what people know. That's what people associate it with. Kind of like it's almost like calling photocopier Xeroxes. Like, that's just what people refer to it as. Like who knows if that's really ChatGPT or they just associate that with all generative AI. But but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, the cost issue. Then you think that would be more of a factor for having the solo attorneys to then encourage them to use the tool, but that wasn't the case. So it'll be interesting. And plus, I mean, you think also with, like with kind of with what Niki was talking about, like with her column, it's like, the smaller the firm, the easier it is for them to implement it. Whereas like at a big firm, with 500 more lawyers and whatnot, it can take a while to implement these kind of tools, or even come up with policies to govern the use of these tools. Even with something like Harvey, that's a little bit less. It's a little bit like more like less transparent than a tool like ChatGPT. So yeah, I mean, like again, like these surveys, they have they do serve a purpose to an extent, but you also always have to take them with a grain of salt. And so it'll be interesting to kind of, but it is interesting just to kind of see the growth of it, of just like the AI use. And I'm sure when Niki's my case survey comes out, officially comes out, then there'll be something, there'll be some similar percentages there too.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say. I wanted to talk about that in a minute, but I was gonna first comment on what you had said about attorneys' understanding or the respondents' understanding of what is generative AI or what is ChatGPT. It reminds me a little bit of um, when the cloud was not a very familiar concept. So you're sort of flipping the concept on its head. That lawyers would use the cloud and not know they were using the cloud. Like they'd use tools that were cloud based, and you'd ask how many people use the cloud. 10 people would raise their hands. How many people use Dropbox? Like half the room would raise their hands. And this is sort of the same thing, but flipped on its head. ChatGPT is like the term for this general concept overall. And so they may think, I mean, even in my first ABA journal article on this, I think I used ChatGPT incorrectly to refer to the whole category because I was trying to cover this so quickly. And then Stephanie set us all straight, at least set me straight when she really got really deep into that stuff, and it was really helpful. But what I was going to say about the data points though was that uh, yeah, my our survey is coming out. The report itself is coming out very soon, and it was interesting because I saw some similarities across those data points, and I also saw some significant differences. We had a much larger um, uh, a group of people surveyed. Theirs was, I think, 562 maybe. Ours is almost 2,900. So we had a much larger survey base, but ours probably included um, uh, a percentage of our customer base because we also sent it out to them in addition to plenty of non-customers as well. But comparing over year, and I asked a lot of the same questions about generative AI last year. I tried to ask very similar, either identical or similar ones this year, and it was interesting. I think that last year their data, the numbers were lower than I would have expected it to be, based upon what I was seeing with our own, with our survey and our data. And I think their numbers this year are more where they should have been. So that huge jump, actually, like that 15% jump or whatever, I think was kind of misleading because I think their data last year was a little off and was a little low. Um, but we definitely saw some similarities and some differences, and it's very interesting. That's why I think it's so important with AI, at least with the generative AI. It's changing so quickly that I think it's really important for people to keep asking these questions across their different companies and different surveys. And if you have our data was drawn from August and September of last year because it takes a while to analyze the data and pull these reports together, right? But when the reports start to roll out, you just start to get a rolling idea of what it looks like across the year as a new report comes out every month or two from a different company. And I think it's super important to have that perspective because generative AI is changing so quickly. And I think I wish that I could access their actual report. I don't have that this year. Other years I've been able to get my hands on it. But the summaries are super helpful, like the one that you did, Bob. And it's interesting stuff.
Yeah. Did you ask the media relations will send you one, I think, if you reach out to the media relations
Oh,
people.
sometimes a little, I don't always wear, I'm not just, I have my press hat and then I have other hats. So sometimes
We'll put your press out on.
those conversations don't go the way I expect them to. I haven't reached out to them this year though, so I don't know what they'll say, but.
Yeah. I just got it yesterday, so I just kind of quickly threw together that AI thing this morning. But um, to your earlier point about some, like lawyers not knowing they're using the cloud, I mean, one of the points about regarding in this survey when they asked lawyers whether their firm is using AI, 22% of them said they did not know enough about AI to say whether their firm is using it or not. And another 18% said they simply do not know if their firm is using it. So I think we're seeing a little bit of that same phenomenon going on right now where, uh, you know, uh, even though they got 30% of firms using it, maybe it's even more, and because some of the respondents just don't even know if that's what's going on. But yeah, I look forward to seeing your report when it comes out.
Some of the most interesting data that we collected and that I found really interesting to analyze was differences across all the different questions that we asked, but across firm size, across practice areas. That was a new thing that we included this year, was to try to get a look at how different practice areas were handling different things. And AI is just one of the things, topics that we covered. But it's super interesting to see how different some of these approaches are across firm size and practice area. And you talked about some of the firm size differences that were covered in the ABA survey, and those sounded about right from what I'm seeing too. So it's super interesting. Again, it's
Yeah.
like the mid-sized firms tend to sort of lag behind with tech adoption, either because they don't have in-house IT or because they have in-house IT that's resistant because they just slow things down. And then they have decision by committee, whereas the large law firms have an entire team devoted to this type of thing. And small firms can pivot super quickly because they make the decisions for themselves. It's teeny, especially solos. Not teeny, but
Yeah.
they have
Yeah.
a lot, they're like a lot more agility and can pivot quickly. So it's interesting to see that happening across with generative AI like it has with other technologies in the past too.
Did you, Victor, did you get a chance to look at any other parts of the report, or is anything yet? Have you looked at it at all, or are you still digesting it yourself? Or?
I mean, going through individually. I mean, but I mean, the reporter who wrote the story for me went through the report, and one thing that one thing that we thought was interesting was that on the social media site, it looks like X, formerly known as Twitter, the popularity is dipping for large law firms. Went from 39% to 21% of lawyers at that firms utilizing X. But for solos, it's going up. So I don't know what that says.
Hmm, interesting. Uh,
That's
I
individual,
was,
not firm-wide, like not the firm's accounts, but the individual lawyers' accounts.
I think it's individual lawyers at those firms. Yeah.
huh, probably, they probably didn't ask about Blue Sky in there.
No, I guess most firms go for LinkedIn. Facebook is popular as well, but yeah, X is dipping. So
Yeah. Um, all right. Well, the yeah, we need a new name for PDOM. I agree. Um, there are see here it is. We're worried about filling an hour, and we're not even going to get to everything we're going to talk about. But I did want to bring up these two different cases that came out this week involving yet more instances of lawyers filing hallucinated citations in court because we've talked about that a number of times now, and turned out there were two cases this week, and technically one of them wasn't this week. It was actually decided by the judge back in October, but I don't think anybody saw it. I happened to be just kind of trying to figure out whatever happened to this has been first reported back in August when the judge ordered the lawyer to show cause on why they should not be sanctioned. And then I never heard anything more about it. And I was just kind of following up, and I found the judge issued a bench ruling back in October. That was a case out of Virginia where, frankly, I think the lawyer got off easy. The lawyer, claimed to be a experienced user of generative AI in his practice, who said it helps him be much more efficient and get a lot more done. He's apparently a very well-known, well-regarded lawyer in the whistleblower space who handles cases all over the country in that area, and very highly regarded. But he did file a couple of motions that had his defense was the cases were real, and I guess what happened was, in fact, the names of the cases were real, but the citations were not. The citations to the courts and whatever else. And he quoted from the cases. The quotes were made up, but his argument was, well, they did sort of at least accurately reflect what the case held, even if the quotes weren't real. Um, the judge let him off the hook without any sanctions. And I don't know, just feeling kindly toward him or what, but he did. But then there was another case this week where the lawyer did not get off quite so easily. This was a case where the lawyer again filed a number of cases that were not real, and the judge ordered him to show cause, and I guess had a hearing on it. And this judge was not feeling charitable at all. He did end up imposing a $2,500 fine on the lawyer and ordered him to take a CLE course on generative AI. Um, and was clearly just not very happy with the lawyer overall. The judge it's an interesting read of a case because the judge starts out quoting this science fiction play from 1920. The judge opens his opinion with this quote from the play saying, "My dear Miss Glory, the robots are not people. Mechanically, they are more perfect than we are. They have enormously developed intelligence, but they have no soul." And he goes on to talk about why you need the soul of a lawyer, not just the mechanics of a lawyer, I guess. So a couple of developments on that front, and I know Nikki, you were writing this week about ethics as well as the path, not just the path to law school firms, but the path to ethics. But here's a couple of lawyers who need to read your article, I think.
I feel like that judge needed to watch Star Trek Next Generation and all the episodes featuring Data struggling with his humanity as an android. So Data had a soul, I think. So I don't know that we've gotten there yet, but I can't. These cases just keep coming up, and I don't know. I just I honestly still think it's just is showing the lack of competence. Even if someone's experienced with tech, it doesn't mean that they're uh, practicing confidently. Like I can't imagine. I used to double and triple check my sites and double and triple check the quotes, on my briefs and um, make sure that the quote that was the one that I had highlighted that it was stickied that showed that that's where it came from and that it was from this case. And I mean, I don't know. Like I can't understand how people are submitting. That being said, when I was the public defenders, we did not do that. We would just grab other people's motions and run with them because we were the public defenders. I guess I'm talking civil practice. There was like literally, we committed malpractice on a daily basis there because I had 600, we all did. And it's not fair to the clients, but they got better representation by far than they would have had if they didn't qualify for the PDs and couldn't hire a lawyer. But so I should qualify that. Um, I feel like assigned counsel and people working for the PDs and DA's offices are a little bit different, and maybe they shouldn't be when I make those judgments, pass those judgments. But when civil practice, and once I was in a law firm without 600 cases, there was absolutely no way, and including my criminal cases, I would have submitted anything without carefully reviewing everything and making sure all the dots were connected. And it was tedious and boring, I'll tell you what, but it had to be done.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I'm surprised that the judge only gave him like what, a CLE and a fine and a CLE. I mean, that compared to what he could have given him, that's not bad, you know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this was the one where the lawyer, what was the phrase he used, that he expressed, he said never in his wildest dreams did he think that ChatGPT would would not give him accurate citations. Uh, and he also claimed to have been somewhat familiar with using generative AI in that he had used case text. He said he'd used case text before, although he didn't specify whether it was case text co-counsel or what it was that he had used. At least the decision didn't specify. But yeah, this is why the judge was so pissed, is that it just, not that he used AI, in both these cases, the judge is clear, it's like, yeah, go ahead, use AI, but you need to check your work. As the judge in this Pennsylvania case said, stop, think, investigate, and research before filing papers in a case. And, Nikki, like you, I'm like, you're taught in law school, you just never file a brief that you haven't read the cases. If you're going to put cases into a brief, you got to read them, make sure they say what they're going to say. It used to be the case even before there was, you know, well before generative AI, you'd see these like little head notes or summaries, and you can't even rely on those that as being accurate statements of what the case. You have to read it for yourself and make sure it says what you say what you say it's saying. So Why lawyers don't get that? I don't know.
I think
There's a
people
lot of
are
bad lawyers out there.
busy, and I think that I think there's so much stress in our profession. I think some of it may be like just people are burnt out, and there's so much stress, and their lawyers aren't making, and only some lawyers are at the top are making millions of dollars. The rest of them are not, except for the top of these large law firms. It's a stressful profession, and it is tedious. You
Right.
think you're going to be in court like LA law, and I was as a public defender, but it was not what I thought it would be, but I loved it. But practicing law, like in litigation and, civil litigation, is you spend most of your time just sitting at that desk, researching, writing. Maybe the partners don't as much, the rainmakers maybe not, but most people that are doing the actual work do, and it is not glamorous. It is, there are times, especially when I was pregnant, that I was like falling asleep trying to do the research. Like I could not keep my eyes open. It is boring sometimes, especially when you're researching like indemnification or something. I specifically remember an indemnification project I had. God, is that dry? Like there are certain topics that are so dry just to research, and you got to do it. But I think nobody wants to sit there and have to do that all day long, not continuously, and so they do cut
Yep.
corners, and I don't know,
Yep.
it's hard.
All right. Any final words? Uh, As the car talk guys would say, we managed to waste a perfectly good hour.
I'm feeling like I feel like if we did P Dooms, something about just the news this week, not just the legal tech news, I would say, not even like the news. I'm feeling like doomy. I don't know. Maybe it's the weather, time of year. Am I the only one feeling like,
No,
uh,
it's yeah. I mean, well, I mean, it's snowing here right now. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah. No, I definitely kind of see where you're coming from. I mean, it was gloomy and like, every day it's like something new. It's yeah, it's yeah, something new every day that to be worried about.
Yeah, it's been a rough week.
Yeah.
Starting with the certain speech given earlier this week, and all going downhill from there. I've never felt like we've lived in a more. Well, I was saying in our little private chat today, I feel like there's a whole resurgence of the McCarthy era happening again. Only this time McCarthy happens to be in the White House instead of just in the Senate. So scary times.
get everyone.
On that cheery note,
On that note,
I hope Stephanie has a good vacation. She's heading off, and Gio has a safe flight, and we'll be back here next week, perhaps with a few more panelists. We'll see. Thanks to everybody for joining us, and it was a good discussion actually. Enjoyed it.
yeah,
So thanks.
Me too.
thanks,
Alright.
guys.
Bye.